Welcome to my presentation. Today I'm going to show you our project, Learning How to Avoid Plagiarism by Adopting a Rhetorical Perspective on the Use of Sources, a new approach in curricular information literacy sessions for computer science and engineering students. My name is Beatrice Baldarelli, and I will present you our project. Let me give you a brief outline of the main points I am going to deal with today. In the first part of this presentation, I will briefly describe the two main forms of plagiarism in higher education. In the second part, I will focus on the prevention of unintentional plagiarism through development of source competence. I will show how we adapted and implemented Joseph Bitsop's BEAM framework in a teaching module for computer science and engineering students in order to provide them with the source competence needed to actively avoid unintentional plagiarism. At the end, I will draw our conclusions and give a short outlook on the further development of our project. We are now at my first part, forms of plagiarism in higher education. In the last 20 years, plagiarism has increasingly become one of the more urgent issues in higher education. Easy access to digital information, the influence of Google on search habits, and a lack of awareness concerning the validity of digital sources strongly influence the way students of all fields of studies gather and use information. The problem should be considered under two different points of view. On one side, we have the issue of academic dishonesty. On the other side, unintentional plagiarism. Academic dishonesty encompasses cheating in all forms, starting by assignment in the course of the studies, up to the final thesis, with the extreme case of contract cheating. Unintentional plagiarism occurs if the students are not able to recognize and acknowledge the value or the function of a source. Several studies have highlighted the main triggering factors, like concerning academic dishonesty, academic inadequacy, and the pressure of financial issues, for example. By unintentional plagiarism, poor reading comprehension, and paraphrasing skills. Additionally, computer science and engineering students face specific issues regarding the use of sources and may have, therefore, a different perception of the concept of plagiarism. Computer science deal, for example, with the originality of source coding, or have assessment items that may largely differ from the traditional ones, including programming, spreadsheets, and web coding. The engineering students' insecurities arises from the particular nature of the sources they are supposed to use: patents, standards, material equipment specifications, current rules and regulations, reference material routinely used in industry, and from ethical, environmentally, and safety issues. The occurrence of academic dishonesties and unintentional plagiarism in both undergraduate and advanced courses make it necessary to apply prevention concepts early in the curricula. Hannah Dölling showed in her dissertation from 2018 that the problem of plagiarism in the perception of German university teachers is closely associated with deficiencies in information literacy. Dölling interviewed academic teachers of different German universities about 3 domains of information literacy competences regarding their importance. The domain covering critical evaluation of sources and presentation of information, including citing, turned out to be the most crucial in their opinion. Gaps in this area would explain the students' incapacity to productively combine pre-existing knowledge with original ideas, those paving the way to plagiarism. We are now to focus on prevention of plagiarism in higher education. In the first case, plagiarism prevention necessarily implies ethical education, detecting tools, and deterrent practices. Ethic policies and code of conducts have long been the cornerstone of preventive strategies in academia all over the world. In the second case, unintentional plagiarism, prevention focuses on the enhancement of referencing and citation skills. In this field, institutional writing centers can have a great impact on the plagiarism problem in academic contexts. This is the example of the Schreiblabor of the Karlsruhe Institute of Technology. We proceed now with the main topic of this presentation: prevention of unintentional plagiarism through development of source competence. The Library of the University of Applied Science in Ingolstadt offers to approximately 6,000 students from more than 30 degree programs an average of 400 information literacy courses per year. Here, the courses for computer science and engineering. All courses for first-year students of the business school, the computer science faculty, and the 3 engineering faculties are curricular. 7 degree programs get between the 3rd and 4th semester an introductory course in scientific work techniques. And for 7 programs between the 5th and 7th semester, preparatory courses for the bachelor thesis are mandatory. 11 advanced courses include mandatory assessment portfolio, 2 of them graded, in which students apply the gained information literacy skills to their individual topic. In the landscape of the Bavarian universities of applied science, this is the most comprehensive and integrated information literacy program. It is the result of many years of intense collaboration with lecturers, professors, deans, and university rectors, and the rigorous conceptual work has underpinned it from the outset. In order to guarantee the coverage of all courses with a small team of teaching librarians, these have a modular structure. The modules cover 4 main areas: systematic analysis of the research topic, research strategy and documentation, scientific argumentation, plagiarism, and citation. The modules are designed so that each of them can be easily adapted to the specific curricula of the degree programs, and in the advanced courses, to the individual contents of the bachelor thesis or projects. A continuous and homogeneous transfer of competence is guaranteed by the sequential structure of the modules. One of the core elements of the program is the interactivity. We have striven to maintain this interactivity also during the coronavirus pandemic, transferring the contents of all 4 modules in e-learning unities designed with the tool Articulate Storyline 360. The learning platform Moodle offers a suitable learning environment for the courses, and in addition, the possibility to collect learning data. Despite the complexity and comprehensiveness of our educational offering, we are constantly faced with the insecurity of senior students regarding the issue of plagiarism. At the beginning and at the end of each advanced courses, we conduct brief surveys, orally with the aid of flashcards and flip charts, or online with Pingo, aimed at assessing the major information needs of the participants, their expectations and doubts regarding the writing process of a final thesis. According to these surveys, the students fear most of all to commit unintentional plagiarism. Assessment portfolios contain always a task where citation rules must be applied correctly to source according to a specific citation style. Nevertheless, and regardless of this specific training and graded assessment, the majority of students who attend our private support sessions in the last stages of the bachelor thesis are still greatly concerned with this issue. We needed a new approach, and the new framework for information literacy for higher education was an ideal starting point. The framework, with its meta-literary and meta-cognitive approach, led to a flexibilization of previous standards by reshaping the vocabulary of information literacy and shifting the focus to a new critical perception of information. 3 frames in this concept in particular underline the core message that information must always be contextualized in a multi-directional and multi-perspectival communication network. Authority is constructed and contextual, information creation as a process, and scholarship as a conversation. Searching for a new didactic approach that would address the problem of unintentional plagiarism from a perspective that is not exclusively normative, we have come across the innovative framework Joseph Bitsop conceived 2008 for research-based writing. Its strength lies in the new perspective it applies to the analysis of sources, going beyond the traditional categories of primary, secondary, and tertiary. Bitsop's rhetorical framework creates an alternative vocabulary for the didactic of writing, considering scientific sources in their rhetorical argumentative functions. In other words, leads the students to ask themselves what a writer could do with a source. In this model, background is every material that a writer takes account of as a fact and insert in his work as authoritative element, expecting their readers to do the same, so Bitsop. The frame authority places the same degree of importance to the contextuality and relativity of information, which must always be interpreted against the background of the community that produces it. Exhibit covers all the materials a research writer is supposed to interpret, analyze, or explain. In most cases, this process coincides with the original part of the work. Argument is used for source materials that has to be questioned by the research writer. In the process of highlighting the original part of their own work, an author should use sources as an argumentative support or as evidence to be computed, adapted, or expanded. Method refers to information resources that convey procedural rules, frameworks, models, reference tests, investigational procedures, statistical treatments, in short, ways to approach a problem. Methods imply almost always a specific terminology the research writer has to adhere to. A great advantage of Bitsop's model is that the framework is easily visualizable, is equipped with catchy keywords, is applicable to both writing and reading exercises, and can be combined with information literacy instruction. The model has been positively received and incorporated in courses across different fields of studies, mostly in the humanities or in interdisciplinary concepts. Nevertheless, Bitsop himself was convinced that the model was applicable also in the context of technical studies. On summer 2019, we started to redesign our module Plagiarism and Citation, implementing the BEAM framework. At first, in the original English version for international master students of the degree program Engineering and Management. The positive feedback encouraged us to move further and try to adapt the framework also for German students. Since Bitsop emphasized the importance of key terms in this alternative nomenclature, it was also essential for us to transfer the concepts into German. On the one hand, so they did not lose their meaning, and on the other hand, so that they could be used in an equally easily memorable acronym. Finally, we allocated in the 5 frames the different types of media, formats, and content that students have learned to classify and critically evaluate in the module Research Strategy and Documentation, focusing on how information is produced and published. Background would be in German Hintergrund. Specific for engineering studies are sources that can be used as an authoritative background, such as the publications of professional associations. Some of these publications and other similar sources may not meet the citation requirements of other disciplines. For example, material produced by and about corporations, press releases, product manuals, and so on. But also information gathered through direct contact with experts, practitioners, and consultants. Nevertheless, students must rely on them if they want to describe the state of the art of a topic. Exhibit would be Untersuchungsgegenstand, research object. While at first sight this approach may seem unsuitable for the technical disciplines, it can contribute to sharpen student sensitivity to the challenges of data interpretation. Exhibits in these fields can be in very different formats: interviews, measurements, statistical surveys, standardized test data, mathematical theorems, technical reports, and different forms of grey literature. And the correct use of each of them requires higher competences. Method and argument are practically the same, and the translation Methode and Argumentationsstütze, argumentation support, is very near to the original terms. The different information formats characteristic for computer science and engineering studies make it necessary to expand the BEAM nomenclature and items to a fifth function, normative frame, German normativer Rahmen. Unlike the other sources, standards and patents may contain mandatory requirements if incorporated into contracts or regulations. Knowledge of the organizations that produce, revise, and update standards, codes, and patents is essential for the technical disciplines. Students need also to know that standards are continuously developed. It is safe to affirm that the employ of standards, codes, and patents presuppose a higher level of information literacy. To work with these sources from the point of view of the BEAM framework is also a way to deepen the understanding of research as a communication that needs a particular language in each different field. The resulting acronym HUMAN is just as easy to memorize in the German language as BEAM for the English-speaking students. The first category, background. The main purpose of these sources is to create a context using facts pertinent to the topic and the field of research. And we have our H. The second field is research object. These sources need to be transformed to be analyzed and interpreted. Interpreting data often requires specific data management expertise. And in a broader sense, the research writer should not underestimate the challenge of correctly and scientifically extrapolating presentable results from the available raw material. And we have here our U. The third field is method, Methode, theory, and we have our M. The fourth category is argumentation support. The frame scholarship as a conversation offers a broader vision of this issue, one we can implement in our application of the BEAM framework. According to it, novice learners and experts at all levels can take part in the scholarly conversation. Students should consider themselves as members of the scientific community, provided that they are aware of its specific conventions and of their own inexperience. Information literacy can help them to acquire the discursive skills and argumentative competences they need to participate to this conversation. And we have our A. The last frame is the normative frame. The function of these sources is basically to provide a reference framework for the documentation of technical development, for innovations and alternative solutions. And we have our M. The session Plagiarism and Citation already contains some introductory reflections on the legal and ethical implications of plagiarism and practical exercises on how to determine whether a text passage may be considered plagiarized or not. With the implementation of the HUMAN framework, we considered different contexts in which we would adopt different exercises for the in-person and virtual session. For the in-person sessions, we thought of think, pair, share analysis of scientific articles according to HUMAN. For the virtual sessions, we plan to implement the theory in an e-learning module and then to create Moodle activities, peer feedback, wiki with examples of source uses and tests and so on. After reviewing precedent didactic implementation of BEAM, we decided that the type of exercise best suited for the in-person sessions, due to the limited time available, approximately 90 minutes, was a think, pair, share task, because the method is particularly suitable for testing the comprehension of a new content. At the same time, peer cooperation makes it easier to immediately verify validity and practicability of the proposed framework. The second exercise form is the discussion of claims. Basing on the threshold concepts of Meyer and Land that lay behind the new framework, we do not expect predetermined learning outcomes. We want a learner to experience a shift in perspective. From this point of view, we developed a list of claims to be discussed in the classroom or examined in virtual peer feedback sessions. There are claims for all the 5 points of the framework. And these claims, they should not be perceived as rules, but as starting points for a discussion following the Human session. Students can also be invited to conceive new claims for each category. The discussion may foster further reflection that will eventually lead to a deeper comprehension of the value of sources in scholarly contexts. We are now coming to our conclusions and an outlook. The principal aim of adopting the Human framework in the plagiarism and citation module is to provide computer science and engineering students with the theoretical background needed to create a critical and responsible attitude towards information sources and thus avoid unintentional plagiarism. Cornerstones of this process are following points. Smaller universities that do not have a writing center must consider the teaching library as the main reference point for most of the scientific writing issues. Deeper understanding of an essential statement of the framework, the scientific community is a communication space in which every research-based text fits, even those of the beginners, is very important for the students to understand that scientific rigor and academic honesty are a prerequisite for a seminar paper as much as for a doctoral thesis. The concept of source competence is very important. If information literacy instruction is limited to library stuff like research or formal citing rules and continue to be perceived as a separate element from the creative writing process, students of technical subjects will be often confronted with a feeling of failure. This frustration will result from being forced by the rules of scholarly writing to find as used sources, to perhaps know everything about borrowing books and searching journal articles in a database, but not understand why and how it is necessary to use them, especially if their task in the final thesis is a mainly practical one. This is where the implementation of the Human framework can make a difference. And our outlook for this project, the next step will be to implement the Human framework instruction in our e-learning concept. Information literacy courses are currently hosted on the platform Moodle, so that the students' activity can be analyzed through multimodal collection of learner data. A long-term aim is to conduct a study on the effects of the new plagiarism model on the occurring rate of unintentional plagiarism by relating the outcomes of the courses with an analysis of the bachelor thesis of students who have benefited from this new approach. We hope, in this way, to demonstrate that a better understanding of the different function of sources can improve their citing competences. Thank you for your attention.